It's 1983, somewhere between a Saturday tea time and a school night you weren't supposed to be up for. Four men in a black van with a red stripe are about to save someone who can't go to the police. The A-Team was made in Los Angeles for an American network by American writers for an American audience, and yet, somehow, it never felt like a foreign import. It felt like it belonged right there on the schedule alongside everything else we grew up with. Maybe it was the plan always coming together. Maybe it was Murdoch's chaos.
Roller up. High octane. All right, I'll do it.
You could always count on Murdoch to do the unexpected.
B.A.'s frown.
Good afternoon, sir. May I...
May you what, sucker?
May I park your vehicle?
Are you crazy? Nobody drive my van but me. Get out of here.
Or face talking his way into the impossible.
Herbert Digby, coffin salesman. You just asked it, we got the casket. You got trouble holding down a job, or you're some kind of con artist.
Whatever it was, the writing reached past the accents. The American setting and found something that just worked on us. It appealed to our hearts the same way our own shows did. This is the show about American soldiers the army said didn't exist. But for a lot of us watching it this side of the pond, it never felt like someone else's show, it felt like ours. This is the story of how the A-Team become part of British TV, without ever setting foot here. But to understand why it worked, you have to go back to a pitch meeting at NBC in the early 1980s. Stephen J. Cannell had just been let go by ABC after a string of shows that never quite broke through. NBC's entertainment president, Brendan Tartikoff, brought him in with an idea that sounded less like a TV pitch and more like a dare. Take the Dirty Dozen, mix it with Mission Impossible, add a splash of Magnificent Seven, and maybe even a little bit of Mad Max, and somehow make it work every week on network TV. Cannell brought in Frank Lupo, and together they built a show around a simple, almost fairy tale-like premise: four Vietnam veterans, falsely convicted of crime they didn't commit, escaping military prison to become soldiers of fortune, helping people the system had failed, while staying one step ahead of the army trying to hunt them down. The show premiered on January the 23rd, 1983, as a 2-hour NBC movie. A week later, the first regular episode aired immediately after the Super Bowl. About as big as a launchpad as American TV could offer, and it worked. That episode reached 26.4% of American television audience, putting the A-Team firmly on the map.
The A-Team, that's the new NBC TV's adventure series. That's a hit.
And it premieres tonight right after the Super Bowl, starring you and George Papard, right?
That's right. And if you don't watch the program, I'm personally come in your house and take your TV and get a TV to someone who want to watch the program.
Even the casting had its own bit of drama. Face was written with Dirk Benedict in mind, but NBC initially cast Tim Dunnigan instead for the pilot. Within weeks, the network reversed course. Benedict took over, and the team, as we knew it, was finally complete. 5 seasons, 98 episodes, a formula so simple it should never have worked, and somehow it never stopped working. So why did a show this American end up feeling like part of the British TV furniture? Because the formula itself traveled. Every episode followed the same shape. The team gets pulled into someone else's impossible problem. Hannibal cooks up a plan that shouldn't work. BA gets tricked onto a plane he's terrified of. And somewhere around the 20-minute mark, they're welding armor plates onto a full truck in a barn. You didn't need to understand American politics, American accents, or American geography to follow it. You just needed to wait for the plan to come together.
I love it when a plan comes together.
That's exactly the same thing television comedy had been doing for decades. The reassurance of a familiar shape, episode after episode. In Father Ted, it was Ted's latest scheme spiraling out of control. In the A-Team, it was Hannibal's plan. Different countries, different genres, that same comfort. And crucially, despite all the bullets, explosions, and spectacular crashes, the show rarely allowed anyone to suffer serious consequences. It meant kids could watch it at tea time alongside shows like Blackadder and Grange Hill. That's not an accident, that's a show built, whether Cannell knew it or not, to slot straight into a British Saturday. The predictability wasn't a weakness, it was the whole reason we let it in. A show like this lives or dies on its characters, and the A-Team gave you 4 completely different characters who somehow work perfectly together. Colonel John Hannibal Smith, played by George Peppard, was the leader, a brilliant tactician, a master of disguise, rarely without a cigar. He genuinely loved the danger, thrived on it, and the whole show hinged on that one line delivered with a grin.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Whatever chaos the episode threw at him, Hannibal was always 3 steps ahead. Lieutenant Templeton Faceman Peck. Dirk Benedict was the charmer, the con man, the scrounger, the one who could talk his way into a locked warehouse, a getaway car, or pretty much anyone's good graces. If the team needed something impossible by tomorrow morning, Face was the one who found it. Captain H.M. Howlin' Mad Murdoch, Dwight Schwartz, was the wild card, possibly the best helicopter pilot to come out of Vietnam. And possibly not entirely well. He lived in a veteran psychiatric hospital between missions and talked to an invisible dog named Billy. The show never quite told you whether he was genuinely unwell or simply enjoyed the world's most comfortable hiding place. Either way, he was chaos with a pilot's license. And Sergeant Bosco B.A. Baracus, Mr. T, the muscle, the mechanic, the master at arms, quick to anger, hence bad attitude, and famously terrified of flying. Which meant the team spent half of every season tricking him onto a plane by any means necessary, usually sedated.
Hey, Hannibal, you know I don't fly.
4 completely different men, thrown together by circumstance, who somehow made every impossible plan feel inevitable by the time the credits rolled. The A-Team crossed the pond quickly. ITV picked it up just months after its American premiere, with a 2-hour pilot first airing in the UK on Friday, the 22nd of July, 1983. The series then moved into the slot that became legendary, Saturday Tea Time. That scheduling decision mattered more than it might seem. Saturday Tea Time in Britain wasn't just a time slot. It was practically sacred. It's where families gathered before the evening properly started, and the A-Team slotted into it as naturally as anything for the BBC or the ITV had made themselves. And the show gave British viewers plenty to love on their own terms. There was Mr. T, an American cultural phenomenon.
What this food talking about now?
Unlike anything British TV had produced, all the gold chains, the mohawk, the growling one-liners, utterly unfazed by anyone, yet permanently terrified of flying.
The plane?
There was Hannibal's disguises, often virgin or outright pantomime, which fit alongside a British sense of humour that loved a man in a city costume solving a serious problem. And there was that theme tune, instantly recognisable, blaring out of TVs in living rooms up and down the country every Saturday. And the A-Team didn't just live on the television. It became a huge part of British children's culture, with the characters appearing in comics, magazines and merchandise. Another sign of just how big the show had become with British kids. ITV kept repeating the series for years. That lived on afterwards on channels including UK Gold, Bravo and Channel 5, meaning generations of British viewers who weren't even born in 1983 still grew up catching it on a rainy afternoon. So a few episodes worth noting before we go on. Mexican Sleigh Ride, the 2-hour pilot that started it all, first broadcast on NBC on January the 23rd, 1983. Reporter Amy Allen hires the team to rescue a colleague being held in Mexico. And in the process, we met all 4 men at once. Hannibal's plan, Face's talk, Murdoch's chaos, BA's muscle. Children of Jamestown followed straight after. And it's a genuinely strong second outing. The team infiltrates a cult to rescue a young woman trapped inside, only to end up captured themselves before turning the tables. Fans of the show still point to this one as one of the best examples of the format working exactly as intended. The episode Pros and Cons is another early highlight. The team going undercover inside a prison where the warden is running a legal fight between inmates. It's tense, it's tightly plotted, and it shows this show could do serious without losing its sense of fun. And the out-of-towners is worth a mention too. The team taking on a New York mobster, with Face in particular getting plenty to do as the smooth talker working his way into criminal circles. None of these needed complicated arcs or heavy backstory. Each one is a complete adventure in 48 minutes. Which, as we said, is exactly why it traveled so well. So maybe the real reason the A-Team never felt like someone else's show. It wasn't made here, it wasn't about us, but it was built on something that translates anywhere. A plan, a team, and a simple promise that by the end of the episode, everything would come together. That's not so different from what kept us coming back to our own shows week after week, decade after decade. Different accents, different fans, same feeling. Whether you're in Britain, Australia, America, or anywhere else in the world, somehow we all ended up watching the same shows. Subscribe to Back to the Box and let's go back there together.
The A-Team.